I think let's start. People will keep on joining. Uh, Thank you so much, everyone who has joined again today, taking time out from your, I am guessing a lot of you are working professionals, and of course, it takes a little bit of effort to take time out and join rigorously. So thank you so much. I see a lot of new faces today in comparison. So I hope uh, you get to understand about the concept more that we are trying to learn about. With us today, we have Mr. Manu Bhatnagar, who is an integral part of INTACH and heads the Natural Heritage Division, which plays a pivotal and an important role when we talk about bridging the gap between culture and environment, and how both the directions can serve for each other and for themselves as well. The topic that we are going to discuss today is about how culture can be utilized as an important resource for conserving environment, and again how environment has been an integral part of our lives, of our culture that has been devised over these years, and how we still see its impact in our day-to-day lives in the culture that we see all around us. So I'll share my screen and provide a little bit of insight as to what we'll be discussing about it today. You know, how we've seen a lot of our cultural practices uh, devised around and for environment. We see a lot of nature worship that we tend to do in terms of, in all sorts of religions that we follow, with respect to Hinduism, with respect to Buddhism. The Enlightenment happened just, just near the tree. So you see that sort of link happening around. Even, if you just think about the practices that are devised. For example, we tend to conserve a lot of wildlife species while we associate them with cultural practices. For example, if you take the example of a snake by in itself is a venomous, a poisonous creature. But of course, it plays an important and integral part in maintaining the natural cycle. And it's very essential for the environment, for its sustainability, for its balance. But, once you come across a snake, the instinct, the basic instinct and the immediate action is to kill that creature. So in order to avoid that, just to give you a little bit of idea, we've started, somewhere, some time back, people started worshipping them. They associated that particular creature with Lord Shiva, and probably, it kind of uh, uh, it was maybe to stop that sort of that sort of harm to such creatures. So see how closely and intrinsically our cultural activities are linked to environment, its sustainability, its conservation, all in all. With respect, coming back to the project of INTACH Cities for Culture, the commitment 4 talks about culture and environment and how cultural factors can act as accelerators for environmental responsibility and sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, there are these, different aspects. There's this social aspect, there's this economic aspect, and then again, there's this most important aspect of environment. So in order to be able to term a particular society as sustainable, environmental sustainability plays an important role, and culture has been a key to it. And it's important we keep it that way. So we, with respect to the program, this is what the program talks about and promotes it in that fashion. It emphasizes on the fact that nature and culture have evolved alongside. It's a symbiotic relation. It has been a symbiotic relationship. And they form a constantly evolving balance with, as you know, time is progressing, there are lots of changes happening. So with respect to culture and environment, lots of activities are of course, you know, adapting to the current situation, and they are again serving the dual purpose for serving each other and themselves alongside. The program talks about the recognition of traditional knowledge system that had been there, and to not let go of it, to better to understand it better, and learn about how ecosystems interact with each other and how that can be probably utilized while conserving environment and culture simultaneously. It promotes the ecological thinking and values of sustainable development, and it talks about accepting responsibility of environmental impact of infrastructure and cultural activities and events. Before diving into what all different things the program talks about, I will quickly, would like to invite uh, Manu sir to probably shed some light on how this, how this intricate balance of culture and environment is important, and how both of these two play an important part in lives of each other as well as for themselves. So we'll be, it will be really wonderful, sir, if you could shed some light on it.
Thank you, Sukriti, for that introduction. And friends, welcome. We at INTACH are in a organization which has, emphasized upon the cultural aspects of life. Now, for environment, for a natural heritage division which is functioning within a cultural organization, we have to have a focus which is very different from many others, environmental organizations or NGOs. And I would just like to say something about that, which will bring home to you the difference between what we do and what others do. So, for example, there are, you might have heard of Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF, or Wildlife Trust of India, or Wildlife Conservation Society of India. So these are all devoted to wildlife. Okay, that's a hardcore area of environment. And then there are so many others. For example, there may be the snow leopard group that focuses only on one species. There are other organizations which look at solid waste and how it is to be disposed, because in recent years, solid waste has become a very big issue. There are those who look at purely water pollution. There are others who are looking at grasslands. There are others who are looking at wastelands. These are all hardcore areas. And then there are people who are looking at climate change. Okay, so what do we do? What does the NH division in INTACH do? So we do some of these things, the hardcore activities, but then there is a large segment of our work which is which is at the intersection of nature and culture. And so we have tried hard to understand how the two aspects are linked. So I'll dive into my presentation. I don't promise that we will have attained a great deal of understanding, but I think this is the beginning of an understanding, because I've tried to read a lot of literature on this subject. And I find that either it is very dense in very philosophical terms, not easily comprehensible to laymen or even to experts. So I've tried to give it my own interpretation. I have not reached the end of my limits of understanding, but wherever I have reached, I am going to present to you, and I hope it will make some sense. So I'm just sharing the screen. Here it is. And I'm also sorry that I'll be moving a little fast, for the reason that there's World Water Day, and there are many presentations today to be made. Yeah. So I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So here goes. Yeah. So now see what the slide says. It says that nature is the mother of culture, and culture thrives if nature does. Now, as you know, we have been losing a lot of aspects of nature around us. Our forests have dwindled, our rivers are anemic, um, our soils have become less productive. All kinds of adverse aspects are gaining strength. So as nature declines, our culture would also decline because nature is what gives birth to culture, and I'll demonstrate that aspect. But before we do that, I'd just like to take you to the Indian Constitution. There are two articles which are very relevant. The first one is 48A, which is, it talks about the responsibility of the state. And what does it say? The state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forests and wildlife of the country. So it's a very general statement, but it takes within its sweep, almost everything. And then we look at 51A. This is the fundamental duties which are prescribed for citizens in this regard. And that says to protect and improve the natural environment, including forest, lakes, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. So I would say our constitution has been very far-sighted in the respect of environment, and from the constitution have flown several laws which help us to protect the environment. Now, nature, has what are called as ecosystem services. Now, the ecosystem services are, of four kinds. So you have, these provisioning services, which provide, various kinds of material, food, medical resources, fresh water to us. The regulating services, which look at these aspects, how to regulate the climate, the hydrological regulation, and so on. So various kinds of aspects. The supporting aspects of nature, which look at recycling of nutrients, and then photosynthesis or soil formation. And of course, then we have these cultural values. Now you can see that there are, all these mental and physical health, recreation, tourism, aesthetic values, spirituality, and so on. Uh, Now, and then, you even have natural heritage for that matter. Now, if we look at the cultural services in a little more detail, so you find that it can be broken up into these 10 aspects. And on top is cultural diversity. Then you have spiritual and religious values. You can learn a lot from nature. You can be inspired by nature. Aesthetic values, nature is simply overflowing with them. You can learn a lot about social relations. Uh, Nature brings about a sense of place because, the particular kind of landscape, vegetation, landforms, which are typical to a place, gives it its sense of place, and so on. So with this, I'd just like to go on to what really is culture. There are a lot of definitions given in very convoluted language, but I've just tried to simplify it that culture is a word for the way of life, how social groups, they have particular outlooks and attitudes and values which are typical to their group. Now, the group can mean anything. It can be a group of 10 people, or it can be a society of millions. Okay. Now, again, culture is the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people, encompassing language, religion, cuisine, social habits, and so on. So now culture is not inborn. It is something which comes to you from the society and the place in which you have been born or have stayed in. Okay. And then there are so many expressions of culture. So you have at the top language. So why do we have different languages? Why doesn't everybody speak the same thing? Okay, so it has got something to do with the place where you are situated. Architecture is different from place to place. Arts, the way we sing songs is not the way the West sing songs. Okay, and so on. So all these have different forms due to the place in which they originate. Let me give you an example. Even within India, India is a continental sized country, and this is a language map of India. And if you see in different places, different languages are spoken. And actually, even within this, in large spaces, you'll find this can be broken down into many more dialects. For example, in Bihar, you have Maithili, you have Magadhi, and you have Hindi. Okay, move a little west, and you have Bhojpuri. Then you come to the Lucknow area, and you have Awadhi, and so on. You can go on to Khadi Boli and whatnot. So, for example, in Maharashtra, you have Konkani, you have Dakhani, you have Marathi. So now all these, why are there language differences? The reason is that they arise from the differences in the natural conditions, the natural features which prevail in a particular area. And we have come up with this map. This is a map of bioregions, which shows you, this is a map, I can't enlarge it that much on the screen. It is actually showing you all the 714 districts of present day India. But before the districts, you see, the first district came into being in 1792. That is the Salem district in Tamil Nadu. Okay. But before the districts came in, what did we have? How were spaces, defined? And why were they defined over a particular area? Okay. Why was it not the whole place just India? Okay. Because there are so many differences of natural conditions over the space. So, for example, even let me give you an example here. This is what is present day Uttarakhand. But within Uttarakhand, you have two divisions, that is Kumaon and you have Garhwal. Okay. And both have different ecologies, right? And that has given birth to different languages. So here you have Kumaoni, here you have Garhwali. Look at Punjab. We just think it's the whole place is Punjab, but no. The southern part is Malwa. This part is the Doab, and then this part is the Mazar. Why? Different natural conditions. If we go further, you have Jammu, you have the Kashmir Valley, and then you have the cold desert of Ladakh. But that cold desert is coming down further here into Himachal, which is the area of Spiti. Okay. And similarly, if we look south, you have the different mandalams, Chola mandalam, Pandya mandalam. Uh, Here you have, different regions here. The Konkan coast comes down further, and so on. And within the, look at Madhya Pradesh. So you have, and the area of Vidarbha. Now, before the districts, it was Vidarbha. Okay. Or so on. So, all these differences have come in because the natural conditions are different. Now, let me illustrate that point further. Let's just have a look at the map of Rajasthan. So, before the districts came in, right, these were the regions. Now, this is the line of the Aravallis. So, you have a different ecology on this side, on the east, and on the west, you have a different ecology. So, and within these, again, there are subtle differences of nature, right? Now, when we look at the agroclimatic map, which has been drawn up in recent years, you find that these same regions are more or less, they coincide. So, for example, the Wagad region is zone 4B in the modern map. Okay. If we look at Mewar, which is this entire zone, you find it is zone 4A. So basically, there is a distinction between these various regions, which then gives rise to different forms of culture. Let me show you further. So you would not expect this architecture, which is here in Ladakh, to be found over here. Why not? Okay. So similarly, you would not find this material being used in this place. Okay. Because the local materials are different, right? Would you find the same kind of roofing working here? No. So why is that so? Because this is a response to the natural condition, which has brought about these features of the architecture over here. Okay. So purpose, of course, contributes to the form of buildings, but so does the natural condition. Let's have a look at these. Now, here are, these are termite mounds. And these termite mounds have actually inspired certain buildings. This is in Zimbabwe. Okay. Now, we over here don't have such huge termite mounds. So we would not, think of imitating the principles of termite mounds in buildings. Okay. Or look at this. These are, basically mud architecture buildings. And again, you'll find that even in mud architecture, the expressions are different from place to place. So these kind of roof forms, you'll find this kind of thatch is available in Bengal or elsewhere in India, but not in Africa. Uh, Look at this. This is in Yemen. Okay. So these are very low rain areas, and therefore the roofs are completely flat. But here, when we look in coastal Tamil Nadu, in order to ward off the water inflow, you have got these sloping roofs. So again, the expression in architecture is born out of the natural conditions. Okay. Uh, Now, again, have a look. This is bamboo-based architecture. You would find this in the Northeast or in countries where you have a lot of bamboo, but you would not find it outside the Northeast because bamboo is not the natural material, and therefore we have never expressed our architectural ambitions in terms of this material. Okay. Let's have a look at dresses. And again, you find that in the Northeast, as a response to climate, as a response to other functions, you have different dresses. Okay. And this in Rajasthan, it's so hot that you need to keep yourself fully covered, okay, to ward off the sun. So again, a different response. And again, you will see that the dyes, the natural dyes which are available in the desert from the desert plants, they lead to these colors. Whereas in this particular part of the world, you find different sources of those natural dyes and therefore different colors. Okay, so you can see again over here, there is a lot of color in both places, but the very dresses, the forms, everything is different because they are a response to local condition. The turbans over here will be different, whereas the headgear over here, it's, it also demarcates your position in society. So, what kind of natural dyes will be available depends on the plants which grow in a particular area. Now, I'm sure you'll agree that the plants which can grow in the Northeast or in the Deccan would not grow in Rajasthan or in Kashmir. So again, the natural condition leads to distinctions in culture. And then, of course, culture is inspired by nature. And here you see, various, these are inlay works, medieval inlay works, which are inspired by uh, nature, dances, which are again inspired by nature, floral decorations, Madhubani paintings, all inspired by nature. Or, poems. You all have heard of Meghdut by Kalidas and how it's actually the cloud messenger, and it describes the landscape over which the cloud floats. And here is another one on the clouds by William Wordsworth. Okay, but here he's talking about different things. Okay, but my point is that nature inspires culture. Okay, nature also inspires so many things in our language. Okay, so much to learn from nature. Uh, and you can read some of these. Uh, Look at this one. Brooks get crooked because they take the path of least resistance, and so do people. Okay. Or it takes the sun and the rain to make a rainbow, right? So there are a lot of lessons which are inspired by nature, and nature can teach you a lot of things. Uh, so many proverbs and quotations. This one by Rahim I particularly like. Dhire dhire re mana, dhire sab kuch hoye. Mali siche so ghada, retu aaye phal hoye. It's just talking in a simple way about patience. Okay, time will bring results. Okay, and again, this is one which I read from Pope Francis as to how nature is actually nature nurtures. Nature is for others. Rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine on itself. Flowers do not smell their own fragrance. Living for others is the rule of nature, and that is what they would like to suggest for humans also. Okay, you may have heard of this Japanese phrase, Shinrin Yoku. Shinrin Yoku is basically forest bathing. That if you spend time in forests or in natural conditions, you get healed, both physically as well as mentally. You acquire calmness, your blood pressure goes down, all kinds of conditions physically and mentally improve. Okay, now here I'm giving you some etymology also, and this is the famous uh, Gomukh from which the Ganga issues. But what I'm trying to tell you is that the legends have a kernel of truth, and these are the twin Bhagirathi peaks which are overlooking Gomukh. Okay, now why would these peaks be named Bhagirathi after all, and who named them and when were they named? We all know Mount Everest was named after George Everest way back in 1850s. Okay, but we don't even know why these were named the way they have been named. Or look at Mount Everest. It is in native language it is Sagar Matha. Why is that so? Or why is there a truth in that? Is that when the Indian landmass crashed into the Eurasian plate, okay, that led to the uplift of the Himalayas, right? The Indian plate subducted below the Asian plate, and that forced the mountains up. So at one point of time, the land which was Everest, which has become Everest, was at the level of the Sagar. So Sagar Matha, the face to the front, okay, the face to the Sagar, right? And that is how there is a reason behind a name which is ancient, but it has been derived from a natural condition, not this. Okay. We have a lot of, uh, you know, faunal figures, and in fact, a marriage of human and faunal figures which decorate our, ancient architecture, our temples. And this you'd find in so many other places all over Southeast Asia. Uh, so you can see these friezes at Khajuraho, or look at this at Badrinath, and so on. So there are about 67 such, creatures which are to be found on as decorations in our temples. And then again, in response to the local conditions, there are several forms of water harvesting all over India, from north to south: zinc, cheruvu, vav, tanka, kadim, all kinds of things you have seen. Once again, arising out of the local conditions, right? These are those kundis in Rajasthan. These are the vavs in Gujarat, the step wells, the famous step wells. But let me take you here to Europe for a moment, and again to illustrate that nature is the determinant of culture. Now, this is what is known as an air well, okay? And the air well captures the humid air from the sea during the daytime And at night, this thick masonry, the inside of this thick masonry becomes very cold because it is in those latitudes. So it is the northerly latitude and the inflow of humid air, which then leads to the condensation of water, which is then collected over here. Okay. Now, why can't we do that? We cannot do that for the reason that while we do have a humid air inflow on our coastlines, but we do not have naturally that cold temperature which would condense that moisture out of the air. Okay. And again, the water lends itself to this, highlighting the ghats in so many places. Water is, for us, most of our, rituals from birth to death, they involve water. Water is part of the Panch Tat, the foreground of the famous Orcha temples. Again, without water, you can imagine what they would have been. The forecasting of weather. Now, these techniques are, these traditional weather forecasting techniques are to be found all over India, but particularly so in the arid regions. Okay. They are noted in various little couplets so that they can be easily translated to the from generation to generation. Okay. Water is a part of our cultural, our religious rituals, and almost all our, rivers are associated with female deities, and the origin points of rivers are generally, they are religious places. The Kanwadiyas, they are actually carrying Ganga water back to their villages in order to put that water in their wells and ponds in order to make Ganga replicas in a sense, in a symbolic sense. The sacred groves of India, they are wildlife refuges. They provide us with a lot of, medicinal stuff. And some of them are really beautiful. But again, unless we had this aspect of sacred groves, and you find them all over the country. Some places they are called Devbanis, other places they are called Orans, and so on. Okay. Now, trees themselves, some trees, they are, they are called sacred trees, and there's a reason why, because, they create those conditions where, religious rituals, a sense of quiet and tranquility can be built below them. Okay, the wishing tree at Allahabad. The Rudraksh tree itself is, a tree with a cultural aspect. So we are planting this Rudraksh tree in the upper regions of Uttarakhand. The riverine grasses which are available along rivers. Now this is in Prayagraj district. You have all this, craft. Okay. Ashokji, I'll just. Well, that's a call for for me to start the next meeting, but I'll just complete this very quickly. Okay, so the traditional seeds which are available all over, different seeds for different districts, various colors and patterns inspired by nature. So all these conditions now, they do not prevail in different parts of the country. They are very specific to a local area. The river landscapes, again, you cannot get these all over the country. They are again very specific to various areas. These are old paintings of the Ganga, again, an inspiration from nature. Various forms which are, derived from nature. You can see these are, most of these are the golden spiral. Okay, but mathematically precise, but again, inspired by nature. Okay, several forms again available from nature. And these are microscope photographs through a microscope of frozen water crystals. Okay, so different crystals at different times, they give you different beautiful patterns. And the words and the music which you use along with them when these crystals are under formation can lead to beautiful or ugly results, right? So I think I should have been able to illustrate to you the connection between nature and culture. And if nature fades away, then our culture will also fade away, because world over we'll then have a universal culture of jeans, rock, and jazz. Everything will be the same. Okay, it's nature which leads to culture, which leads to specificity in particular areas. Okay, let us not forget that. Okay, so nature to be commanded must be obeyed. We must remember that. And my last line would be that if we look deep into nature, then we'll understand everything better. Thank you.
True. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. May I be
Yeah.
allowed to leave, please? So I have to conduct.
Yes, of course, of course. Thank you so much for taking time out and being here with us. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. So I hope everyone was able to understand this complex yet beautiful and important relationship between nature and culture. And Manu sir's presentation, very nicely explained how culture and nature have been together, and nature has been an important part of our lives without even us knowing about it directly and indirectly, with respect to what we eat, what all things we built out of the material that was available, the things that we mimicked in terms of biomimicry and tried to make devices out of it or do something out of it. So it has been the nature who has been the driving force for us to be able to thrive with respect to culture and as a species too. So, all right, I'll quickly come back again to the program and tell you what all the program suggests in order for you to build this relationship better with respect to it. It talks about the identification of the local bodies that uh, look into the managing of policies and concerns related to the environment at the local as well as at the national level. In case of presence of any of such agencies, what is their understanding of the key policies which are formulated for the issues that are there? Are there any policies related to connection between culture and environmental sustainability in general, even if it's not for the agencies that are there? Anything out there concerns, how things are changing rapidly. There's this huge mammoth uh, problem of climate change happening, and is there any policy talking about it, or are there any steps being taken at the local level for in order to address these issues for resilience, risk prevention with respect to these, and sustainable use of available resources, awareness also with respect to the richness and the fragility of the ecosystems that are there in place? Are there any programs as such to preserve and spread the traditional knowledge system that was a resultant of the practices that were carried out with respect to the natural resources and the nature thus there? So the program talks about it and asks you to look into it at your local level and see how things are going. In order to understand its application part, we again have Akriti here with us. We'll probably quickly show you about how we did it in Bhopal with respect to the city. So, Akriti.
Yeah. Hi. Good
Hi.
afternoon, everyone.
Good
Good evening,
afternoon.
I think. Yeah. So I'll just quickly share my screen and
Yeah.
Is it visible?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I think the brief introduction about the linkage between culture and environment has already been established by Sukriti and Manu sir very beautifully. So I won't get into the details of how these two are linked, but rather I'll get into the details of how we actually look at this linkage with respect to Bhopal and its city level, and rather the larger cultural geography of the region. Okay, so the first action point, so yeah, before we get into the action point, this particular commitment for Bhopal city is very relevant, because for those of you who do not know about the geography of the place, Bhopal is very rich in its water resources. It has numerous lakes, and it has series of lakes that connect with each other. And so with respect to the geography of the place, this commitment becomes really important to look into, because then our policy frameworks, everything that relates to our decision making, has to reflect upon this aspect of the nature that is already there in the city. So yeah, so coming to the first action point, in incorporation of knowledge, tradition, and practices of people and communities into the local environment sustainability. I think somebody's mic is
Yeah, I'll
on.
just check. Yeah. Yeah, it's done.
Okay. Yeah, so incorporation of knowledge, tradition, and practices of people and communities into the local environment sustainability strategies. So this can be looked into two ways. So one is you have a knowledge base that is reflected in the actions, and one is you have actions, you have live examples of traditional practices, which is then again reflected in your knowledge repository. So for this, what we could find was that we have a lot of traditional practices where you have immersion of idols into water bodies, be it Durga Puja, be it Ganesh Chaturthi, and all these festivals are celebrated very vibrantly in Bhopal also. And you have availability of all these water bodies. So certainly these practices are there, and people very enthusiastically participate and become a part of all these cultural practices that are prevalent from the ages, from the centuries. So for this particular aspect, what we could find was that there are a lot of policy frameworks, there are a lot of actions on the ground that have been taken, so that because in the current times, with the increase of the population and the entire changing nature of materials that we use for these idols, there's a high risk of actually, but I wouldn't say polluting the water body, but in a way that your water body doesn't function properly. So the ecosystem of the water body somewhere gets very disturbed. So to avoid such situations, there have been initiatives taken where you have smaller immersion kunds or smaller immersion tanks, where you can, as a suggestive or as you know, it's kind of a replica of the entire act of immersing the idol, but it's not in the natural water body, but it's in the close vicinity to the natural water body. So such actions, this is one of the actions that I'm talking about. Such initiatives or such actions uh, have been taken care of. Then coming to the environmental policy, there are a few points. Environmental policies was actually framed in 1999. After that, we couldn't find any upgraded document for it. There are other documents, but not specifically the upgradation of environmental policy, at least till the time we did this exercise. So the environmental policy also reflects upon certain points where the traditional knowledge system, how you can actually relate it to the natural resource management has been talked about. So documentation of traditional knowledge systems and rights with a view to protect them. Now, the reason we are talking about protecting them is because the traditional knowledge system somewhere reflects or somewhere informs natural resource management practices that have been prevalent throughout the centuries or throughout the ages. And they are um, very sustainable in their fundamental nature. So certainly policy identifies this. The ground reality over the time is different, and but the good part or the positive side of it is that there is a policy framework that is addressing it. So certainly things can be done about it. There are certain things that are done around it, but not, but I mean, you can say that not specifically traditional knowledge systems, um, but in a way they are reflecting upon this whole idea in a very passive manner. So yeah, so coming to the second point, recognizing the connections between culture and environment sustainability in the local cultural policies, including concerns about climate change, resilience, and sustainable use of resources. So as I've been mentioning this, I think in all the previous webinars also, that there is no cultural policy. So certainly the connection cannot be recognized until unless there is a policy. But um, there's an organization, an EPCO it is called. The full form of it is Environmental Planning and Coordination Organization. So EPCO has been one of the very active organizations. It is an autonomous institution of MP government, and most of the environment related decision or documentation or policy frameworks are actually dealt by EPCO. It was formed somewhere in 1989 or 84, I guess, and it works in close coordination with the Pollution Control Board, Housing Department. It is a part of Housing Department, and this is one such organization that actually looks into this aspect of it. Now, coming to the environmental policy also, the environmental policy of the state identifies few points related to resource management. In the local cultural practices and living patterns, there are strong connections between culture and environmental stability. So if you see these reference points, I don't know if they're visible to you or not. Try. Yeah, so for example, if you can see in this action, in this point 6.2, natural resource conservation. So first it's talking about water. So in water, if you talk about the 8th point, you can see encourage and improve traditional methods of rainwater harvesting and storage. So similarly for others also, you have, now for example, if you look into this aspect of public participation, this is the one that was mentioned previously also. You have this documentation of traditional knowledge systems and rights with a view to protect them. So there is a recognition of it, and it has been identified. Certainly there needs to be more action to be taking place on ground. Now, action point number 3, formation of a working group task force which links the work to the Department of Culture. There is no task force which links to the Department of Culture. Again, EPCO as an organization is there, but there is no linkage with the Department of Culture. So the problem, I think one of the major problem lies with the whole concept or the idea of working in different silos and not trying to combine the works or the interdepartmental coordination, because culture department is working on its own. They have their own agendas, they have their own way of working, they have their own jurisdictions. Environment department, EPCO for one of the agencies of environment department, they have their own ways of working. But certainly if there's an interlinkage between them, if there is some sort of an task force that could be formed that can link these two, the results would be much more holistic and much more useful, seeing the current day challenges and threats of climate change that we all are facing and are going to face in the coming times. So action point number 4 now, inclusion of history and culture in promotion guidelines in the production and consumption of local products. Yeah, so for this particular action point, I could say that there have been a lot of initiatives and works done on ground. So MP Hastashilp Vikas Nigam, they have these Mrignani outlets, and Mrignani are actually emporium outlets. They are, you'll find Mrignani outlets in almost all the cities of MP and even outside MP. And in Mrignani, their main idea is to actually display and sell the cultural producers. Now, those cultural producers could be handicrafts, could be artworks, could be anything. And they have definitely close linkage to nature because most of the cultural practices have evolved around nature. So it is a very interesting kind of an initiative because it then helps the local people economically also. And you have, because the moment you start associating to any sort of a natural resource, uh, that it is giving you an economic gain, automatically you have this need or tendency to preserve it, to conserve it, because it is helping you in some way or the other. That is the same case as it goes with you have the moment you understand or start realizing the medicinal value of certain plants, you start protecting those plants or you associate those plants or those species to some religious practice. So it's a very complex kind of a chain, and I would say it's a cycle because everything in a way informs one other. So this for one say this initiative is very helpful, and along with all these products you have these handbills and pamphlets also that actually tell you about the history and culture of these products. So you like whenever you're buying something from Rignania, whenever you have access to these products, it's not just that it's a product and you just buying it for the sake of buying it. You actually can read and understand and then associate the cultural value of that product uh, to that place. And certainly that value comes from the unique cultural landscape of that place. So for this, that's why we've given score 10 for this particular action point also. Um, these are some of the snippets from their website. So they have craft development, they develop enabling environment, develop of craftspersons. So these are three of the most important um, aspects that they are looking into. So they are developing the craft and they are providing providing facilities. So you have development centers, you have they promote them through awards and these things, and then it certainly and then they are providing the skill upgradation programs for people also. So it's an interesting way of looking at the consumption of natural resources in a very sustainable manner. Then coming to the action point 5, recognition of locally produced gastronomy as a constituent element of local culture. I think all of you would agree to the fact that gastronomy has a very strong way to do with the local culture of the place and the environment in the terms that the climate of the place, the availability of water, the kind of water, and the kind of food produced then that place has. So all of these things are very closely related. Um, and Bhopal is very known for its unique cuisines. So MP Tourism Department on their website itself, so it's not for all the cities, but some of the major cities, for some of the major cities, they have these dedicated pages where they mention about the unique places where you can find the cuisines of Bhopal, and for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and where all these places are in the city. And then it also links these cuisines to its natural history or to its history. I would say heritage as an umbrella term. It links to the heritage. Now, heritage could be natural heritage, could be tangible, could be intangible, could be political, could be. It's a huge umbrella term. So, but then the moment you link it with your heritage, it gives you a sense of association. So, tourism department certainly does this, and so they have this page called as Ajab Bhopal's Gazab Food Experiences, and they highlight a lot of places to visit in Bhopal for breakfast, for heavy meals, what kind of meals you can have, and where you can have. It's all mentioned. Uh, in addition to this, you have food melas, food festivals that are organized by government or different NGOs from time to time. And now these food melas, they are important in the sense that they utilize the common public open spaces of the city in a very in a way which is culturally effective for people. So now, for example, if you can see this Bhopali Zaika, Food Carnival 2019. So you can see that it was held in one of the bigger grounds of the city. It's the Bitton Market Ground, and there you have all these Dashera, Ravan Dahan, and all these practices. And in those in those grounds only, you have these kind of activities also taking place. This is in the newer side of Bhopal and in the newer part of Bhopal, but even in the older city of Bhopal, the which is very dense. So it's very difficult to find an open space. But then in Gauhar Mahal, which is one of the most important, one of the important places or mahals of Bhopal city, it's very close. I mean, it's almost adjacent to the Bhopal Upper Lake. So there also you have these similar activities taking place. So either it would be for handicrafts, it would be for food, but these cultural activities promoting food are certainly there, and you can, I mean, it's very visible, and people very enthusiastically become a part of it. So it's not a failed attempt, it's a very successful kind of an attempt. And because it's a successful kind of an attempt, there are more such attempts that are actually happening. I mean, government initiatives are there, or different organizations are coming up with various unique ways of doing it. So gastronomy is again a very important aspect of it, right? So linking food with culture, and food obviously finds its background or its roots in nature. So it's a direct chain that you can see, and it gives uniqueness to the city. So for tourism aspect also, they are actually encashing upon it, which in a way has not harmed it till now. So hopefully this practice turns out to be a good initiative. Then action point number 6, encouraging the government to facilitate and promote citizen initiatives for sustainable use of public spaces through social ecological innovations. So it is again one of the similar things that I was talking about for the previous action point also, that you have various open spaces within the city, and uh, organizing events for food is one of such events. But then there are other events also for rituals. So for example, during Ganesh Chaturthi, you have these pandals, and in every society open space there would be a pandal for Ganesh Chaturthi, and they are decorated very beautifully. So you have these open spaces, and they are actually managed by Nagar Nigam, Bhopal Nagar Nigam, and they take care of these activities within the city, and manage these open spaces very effectively. Then coming to next action point number 7, establishing programs which preserve and promote traditional knowledge of practices and also contribute to sustainable use of natural resources. So for this particular one, you can see there are initiatives. Bhopal, because it is very rich in its water bodies, one of the upcoming traditional practice you'll see is fishing. So a lot of people are actually involved in fishing, and you have around 260 water bodies in 6,000 hectare area. And in addition to this, about 215-kilometer length of rivers, and this has been reported by Fisheries Department. So they have these fish cultures and practices like this, and this water is used for various other practices, various other utilities also. So for the same, MP government promotes various fishing related programs and schemes for fishermen of the state. And simultaneously, EPCO also organizes programs for awareness of sustainable use of natural resources and conservation of natural resources. So with reference to this action point, the reference points that you can see would be for fishermen welfare and fisheries development department objectives. So they have these huge list of objectives that they have, which in a way promote this traditional practice of fishing. Then EPCO's activities also, they reflect in a similar way. So they have environmental research, training, state planning, environmental improvement of water supply bodies, National Lake Conservation Plan, National River Conservation Plan, National Environmental Awareness Program, National Green Corps Plan, Clean Environmental Management Training Program for Tribal Communities under Forest Protection Act. And various schemes that I mentioned are Biosphere Reserve Management Work Scheme. Then you have establishment of community water purification plant. Then they also have an important role to play in the matters of climate changes. Then waste paper recycling unit, state level environmental impact assessment authority is one of the authorities under EPCO. They work in close coordination. Then centrally sponsored National River Protection Scheme, National Environment Awareness Campaign, National Green Corps Scheme. National Green Corps Scheme is important in the way that they educate, train teachers who can actually impart education about the environmental protection and its linkage with culture to the school students. So this is a good initiative because until and unless you have this thing imbibed in yourself right from the beginning, right from the childhood, it is very difficult to because in the current day, most of the people who are living in the urban areas do not actually relate to nature in a very direct manner. We do not have we are not living in the forest, of course. So that linkage, that connectivity, that association is very that disconnect is very strong. That dissociation is very strong. So I think educational programs related to these two or linking these two would be effective. And I think in that light, this is a very important program or scheme of EPCO. Then recognizing the cultural importance of natural spaces with specific programs. So Bhopal Master Plan recognizes a lot of these spaces that are open spaces within the cities, and they have given, so this master plan was of 2005 that we have taken as a reference point. There's a newer master plan that has come, but while we were working on this document, it was not published, so we could not use the information from that master plan. But certainly it elaborates on these points only. So I think we didn't miss out anything. So these are these certain points, like you have recognizing the open spaces for botanical gardens or for zoological park or for fish farm, picnic spot, city park, city forest, golf course, central exhibition ground. And in addition to this, you have Tirth and Mela Pradikaran. So Tirth and Mela Pradikaran, they conduct very limited fairs. So they have identified specific places within Bhopal city, and they have a duration, and that duration is not it's not based on the modern system of months. It's as per our traditional way of understanding months, the division of it and the names of it. So it would be from like Chaitra Ekam to Chaitra Shukla, or Savan ka Mahina or Bhado ka Mahina. So for that entire month, you'll have some fair, and that would be celebrating in its own way some sort of a cultural practice or some association, because most of our these fairs, they are very closely linked to our environmental practices only, because again you have these intangible aspects that you can see in the form of fair, which have a linkage, either they're celebrating nature or they're celebrating monsoon. So that's where you can see that Savan, Bhado, Fagun, Fagun is I think winters. Yeah. So they're celebrating these months, and in the form of these recreational activities. Then encouraging cultural organizations for evaluation of their environmental impact, and carrying out ecological awareness raising activities. So for this, we couldn't find of any other organization that could actually make that has actually worked directly for this. But of course, for EPCO only, we could find that whatever their initiatives have been, which I have discussed earlier also. So broadly, the activities of EPCO, especially the formation of eco clubs or conducting various kinds of programs, is a way of creating ecological awareness. you can see this is one of the list of awareness and training activities that has been carried out by EPCO. So they have climate change awareness program. Then they have Namami Devi Narmade. Their NGC Eco Club in charge teachers training program. So they have training program, awareness program, celebrating specific days like Earth Day, Ozone Day, Wetland Day, Wildlife Week Day. Then they have Swachhata Abhiyan, Mowgli Utsav. For the ones who were not there in the last commitment, also we discussed about Mowgli Utsav. And so this Utsav is basically for the school students, and you have quizzes and various activities within this Utsav. And EPCO conducts this Mowgli Utsav. And so you can see that it is for school students and creating awareness about environment through interactive and through innovative methods. Then one of the reference points is for Regional Museum of Natural History, Bhopal. So even they have different kinds of galleries that actually display about various connections of environment and human beings. So they have galleries for biodiversity, biomes, human and nature, food chains, dead eating and decomposting, biogeochemical cycle. So similar things. So it is a very interpretative way of informing people about their connection with nature, and in a very passive way. Again, it is informing your thought process about your association to nature, because human beings cannot survive on their own. Human beings have to have a close understanding and relationship with nature to actually survive. I mean, the basic primary survival need is actually fulfilled by nature. Then last point is developing platforms to link public and private society, cultural and environmental organizations. So for this also, EPCO is certainly there, but then we need many more platforms where we can actually link the various realms. So you have public sector actors, you have private sector players, you have government officials, you have NGOs, a lot of things that are actually coming together. And so there's no repetition of activities, or there's no repetition of agendas. And until unless there's a whole framework that is addressing it, it won't be a purpose solved. So I think with this, I'll end my presentation. And I think I could give you some insight as to what we could do or we did in Bhopal. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Akriti. All right, we'll take some questions now. If you have any regarding to the topic that we discussed today. Okay. All right, no worries. A good news is that since a lot of you had shown interest, and that's why we came up with the webinar, we could see the results getting into tangible things now. And a lot of the chapters have sent across their first step of the project, which is city profile. I think 9 or 10 of them have sent it. And I'll probably go through them and see what all things can be incorporated more with respect to it. So yeah, it's a positive sign, and I will take it away from that in that sense. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope I see all of you and a lot more of you in the next session that is supposed to happen in April. So yeah, thank you so much. Hope you have a good day ahead. Thank you. Bye.